Welcome back to the Cover 3 podcast here on CBS Sports. That's Tom Fornelli. That's Danny Cannell. That's Bud Elliott. I'm Chip Patterson coming to you live at youtube.com/cover3 and all across the 24/7 Sports Facebook network. Thanks for hanging out. Smash that subscribe, smash that like, come and join us in the chat. It is a Monday show. That means it is time for a pun for the review. Our chance to be able to, is the ghost back? Somebody open up a tab? Oh, okay, we're good.
It's open. What happened?
All right, Halloween is here. Y'all heard that, right?
Oh yeah,
I heard it.
Oh,
I opened the tab. Is that what that was?
Did you open the YouTube tab?
No, I just opened the CBSSports.com.
Are we streaming live on CBSSports.com?
Possibly.
Something is.
Coming everywhere to you.
Oh my gosh.
This isn't a pun for the review show, and that means we get a chance to look back at the weekend that was. Now, when you get us instantly, we've got some takes that are just going to be, not fully cooked. We also have games that are going on as we're recording, and so we need Sunday and Monday morning to be able to get back, break things down. We will be getting into that a little bit later, as well as everyone asks for it every single week, Poll Assassin. Remember, watch your pet monkeys on Halloween when the children come around for trick-or-treating. It is a very important and newsy reminder here on this Monday. Speaking of news, a little bit of news from over the weekend as the Big 12 has finalized its new media rights agreement. It will be with Fox. It will be with ESPN. It will be, in terms of the way that fans consume the Big 12, very similar to what you have going. A new deal comes with new dollar amounts. This, of course, is going to be for a Big 12 that is losing Texas and Oklahoma, but gaining the likes of Cincinnati, UCF, Houston, and BYU. I will be honest, if you guys are good at the charts and breaking down how much money is worth, then I would love for you to add that because I don't have it. But I do think that it does seem like the Big 12, in being able to finalize this deal, is puffing its chest out a little bit, is feeling confident about its future. We had the conference commissioner, Brett Yormark, here on the Cover 3 podcast. Go check that out if you didn't. Feels like this is a good news, and the league feels confident about the deal it got and what its future looks like, right?
I think so. I did the interview with Yormark, and he didn't give me a whole lot, right? It was kind of like on a media blitz tour, but one of the things that he did agree on was that the competitiveness of the league would make it attractive to a multi-partner setup. And it appears from reading the Sports Business Journal that the reason the Big 12 cashed in so well is that they were able to convince Fox that the second tier games in this league are decent entertainment, which I think, at least in the past couple of years, is accurate. So that to me seems like why they cashed in the most. And apparently Big 12 basketball is also decent. I don't watch college basketball, so I don't know.
It's pretty good.
Okay.
They win national titles and stuff. I think they've won the last two at least.
Well, the Big
Kansas,
Ten,
right?
Big Ten hasn't won a national championship in basketball since Michigan State back in 2000. And yes,
well, that's just because the Big Ten beats itself up during the regular season, Chip. They're all tired by the time they get to the tournament. That's what the SEC would say if it were football. So that's the only reason that's happened.
But you mentioned a great point. Kansas, blue blood in basketball. Baylor, a modern power that Scott Drew has built it. And they're welcoming a Houston program that's clicking right now, too. Big 12 basketball for the future moving forward. Very, very good for sure.
Yeah, I think
Houston's good in basketball? Who knows?
Yeah, they Final Four a couple years ago, knocked Illinois out last year. I think it's a good, it depends what your perspective is. If you're trying to compare the Big 12's deal to the SEC and the Big 10, it's not even the same sport pretty much, as far as I think I saw somebody did the math. I think it breaks down to $31.8 million annually per school, but that doesn't include all the playoff. That's just going to be from the TV deal, which is good because that's more than they were getting with Texas and Oklahoma right now. So you improved, but you're still going to be way behind. But just as far as keeping the conference afloat, I think it's a great deal for the Big 12 because now you've got some stability. You're also, if you're the Pac-12, I think that it's good for the Pac-12 as well. Not in that I don't know what kind of money the Pac-12 is going to get, but in the sense that the Big 12 is not going to be making so much money that there's a reason for a Pac-12 school to jump now. And I don't think the Pac-12 is going to get the kind of TV deal that's going to give the Big 12 schools a reason to jump at any point. So I think it's kind of my biggest takeaway from the deal is it's probably going to calm things down.
Tom, can I ask you this, or Chip, or Dan, if you know, is there some risk that the networks have cast their lot with the Big 12 and thus it will actually hurt the Pac-12 deal?
Big 12 fans seem to be, I don't know why there's been this weird rush between Big 12 fans and Pac-12 fans over
because they're trying to poach each other. That's why.
Crabs in a bucket.
That's what the sport is now. It's TV money. It's like
we got there first. Like, I felt like that was a big part of the narrative around this. I don't know, Danny, what do you make of the news?
I mean, this is Brett Yormark's first move, right? I mean, this is his first big deal as the commissioner. I think it does stabilize things. I think you can sell it as, for all the positives, 2.28 billion sounds like a lot of money. I just, and there's some great aspects to it. One, it's done in 2031, which is still 5 years before the ACC's deal, which they're still in, is up. So they can get to the next round if they do have competitive product that he's talking about. I just feel like, I thought when you said just feel like, the big TV players have cast their lot for the Big 12. When I look at the bigger picture of college football and I see these numbers, I see the SEC and Big 10 still pulling away and wonder what that does to the competitive balance. It's already hard enough for the ACC, Big 12, and Pac-12 to state their case for why we deserve a team in the playoffs. And yeah, if we expand, they'll get one, but it probably will be 3 or 4 Big 10, 3 or 4 SEC, and one of the leftovers, one each. Which, if that's what's good for you, and maybe you get a nice story out of it, and that team can make a run and win a national title, that's great. But they won't be as tough or competitive top to bottom, because that's where the spending race comes in. And if we get to a point, which I think we're going to get to sooner rather than later, of paying the players, the SEC and Big 10 are going to be able to pay more, so they're going to have the better players. So it just feels like you're going to see this continued just separation between the Big 10 and SEC and everybody else.
Yeah. I was saying, going back to the question Bud asked too, like, I think it was important for the Big 12 that they got both Fox and ESPN involved, because obviously ESPN owns the SEC, and now Fox's biggest assets is Big 10 football, even though the Big 10 is split between, CBS, NBC, and Fox. So to get on both of those networks, they're still going to be the second, most attractive property that they have at best. But it's important to be on those networks where they will be showing those games and people will be watching Big 10 games and SEC games, and they can promote the Big 12. So to your question about the Pac-12, it might not be great for them, because if you're looking around at inventory as far as the available networks, I don't know how much Fox or ESPN are now going to be bidding for the Pac-12. So I do wonder if their best path forward, or not their best path, but if they are more likely to go to like the streaming route now with like an Apple TV or something, if that's something that they want to do, if they can get the kind of money that they're looking for to do it.
Have you guys seen I saw it. It was a chart. Now I haven't seen it with the latest Thursday night Amazon Prime, but their ratings from the first, it was like it was just straight downhill slide. Now they did have Brady come back, and I didn't see if that got an uptick, but they got like 15 million the first one, and it was down to 8. It was almost in half within 6 weeks. That doesn't bode well for the Pac-12. I mean, I get there's money there, and if those companies are willing to do it, but if those companies are paying attention to what's happened with the NFL, the king, in our country, the NFL is king, it may not look that attractive for, the quality of your product, and the companies may not want to pay for it either. Because if they're walking away and not streaming as much for the NFL, what do you think they're going to do with Pac-12, when it comes around?
If Amazon did not get a big number for Brady and Lamar, then they're in real trouble. My guess here is just that the games had been so bad that, and like the matchups were bad and they played out poorly in recent weeks. I do think it was interesting. They're going to run some playoff games though, counter to what the NFL's doing. They eventually just said enough is enough. So that was kind of cool to see. I think that people will choose college playoff games. People who are not in big cities, like your northeastern market would watch the worst Jets game in the world over the national title, right? Because they just don't grow up in an era, or in an area rather, where college sports is a thing. It's like if you're a European, like they don't have college sports over there. It's kind of the same thing in the Northeast. But in areas of the country we actually enjoy both, I think a lot of people will pick a good college game over a poor quality NFL game. And so I'm glad they finally put their foot down on that. Also, for the Big 12 thing, the last thing I'll say on this, I guess last two things. Number one, I mean, You have Fox Bet, right? You have all these other sports books that are going to be entering the area. Big 12 has a lot of attractive matchups. People don't like to bet on games with spreads that are 40. They want to bet. They want to bet on these close games. They want to be able to live bet this stuff. Eventually, I'll use ESPN because I don't want to get in trouble with my own employer. Eventually, you're probably going to be able to bet games on the ESPN app, right? And probably on our own app too. I mean, give us 10, 20 years. I guarantee you'll be able to live bet on the app.
Maybe 50.
Exciting games that keep people drawn in are important here, right? That's something the Big 12 offers. Even if they're not great, if they're like somewhat competitive within the league, that offers you a lot of betting opportunities. The other thing you're going to see here is the continued push by your 4 or 5 ACC schools for increased revenue share for the top schools that actually draw. Because they're going to see this number and they're going to say, hey,
this is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Why are these teams, why is UCF getting this while Florida State is getting this?
Well, Wake and Pitt and Cuse just kind of stuck on the teat of North Carolina and Florida State and the teams that actually draw, whether they're good or not.
I'll risk angering the bosses with an idea.
Well, listen, no bad ideas.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like we've got in the future here, we're losing SEC. We're going to have Big 10 in that 3:30 window. We don't have any primetime games that I know of. Maybe we test the Pac-12 waters, see what they're looking for. If we can get a nighttime game on Saturday night, because I'm not sure what we show on CBS on Saturday nights when we don't have double headers because I'm too busy watching football. But I would bet Pac-12 games will outdraw them.
Blue Bloods next.
I will say this is a mid-season take. I don't know if this take would work in February. I don't know if this take would work in June, but I look across the country, and this has to do, Danny, with what you're saying about pulling away. You can have more money and still stink. I mean, if I'm the Big 12, if I'm the Pac-12, I look at College Station and I'm like, look, you can have all the money in the world, and if you might still stink. So the SEC and the Big 10 are pulling away. And I say February because it probably means that their recruiting is still going to be awesome, right? You know, the recruiting budgets, the staff, the way you're able to build that out. If we do get to a true paying players, that will be significant as well as a resource crunch. But, I'm looking around college football right now, and there are teams that do not have the kind of payouts from their conferences that are playing way better than some of the ones that are making the most in college football. So, yeah, I think they can find their way. Good teams will still be able to find their way to the playoff, and now we've got more spots for them. Michigan State, Michigan. As we were just recording the instant reaction show, we were sort of picking up pieces from the post-game press conference of the fight or the altercation, the fracas, however you want to call it, in the tunnel. Now we've got some action from Michigan State coach Mel Tucker. 4 suspensions: Tank Brown, Kari Crump, Angelo Groza, and Zion Young have been suspended effective immediately from what Tucker called disturbing electronic evidence of the incident. The cell phone footage of it looked like getting jumped. And it ties together with Penn State and Michigan, this whole 1 tunnel, 2 tunnel debate. It seems silly, but this is 2 times in this season that Michigan has dealt with violence, or at least the threat of violence, in that 1 tunnel in Michigan Stadium. We didn't get a chance to talk about it much on the instant reaction show, the fighting in general, but now, especially with the suspension, I felt like it was worth bringing up, even if only for a minute. What are our thoughts on what's happening in the tunnel?
No excuse for what happened. Those players that are suspended should, depending on all the evidence available, should probably be suspended for a while. Some serious, thought given to their ability to continue playing for Michigan State. But the larger picture to me is what you touched on, and it's what James Franklin brought up a couple weeks ago, and it's twice this season, but it's not just this season. This has happened in that tunnel plenty of times, and it's just a byproduct of only having the 1 tunnel. Because, like, when you play a football game, emotions are kind of high, and then you're having all these guys cram into the same tunnel to go to the locker rooms at the same time. And it's not like, I know that you do this in other sports, like in soccer, teams come out of the same tunnel, but there's 20 guys. When there's football teams, there's 200.
And pads.
Yeah, in pads, all angry, all just finished playing a football game in which they've been hitting each other for the last 3.5 to 4 hours. Just get a second route to the field for the visiting team. That would solve a whole lot of problems.
I'd be livid if I'm Jim Harbaugh, which he is, I'd be livid if I'm Mel Tucker, which I think he is. He has to, kick off 4 players potentially. You know why? Because if I'm Jim Harbaugh, I'm pissed because you had 20 guys jump one of my guys. And if I'm Mel Tucker, I'm pissed because you had 60 minutes to have a legal fight on the field. And that's what you gave me? Like that? Like, what happened to that? Like, why don't you go out and fight when you can fight instead of getting run all over throughout the game? And then when the number's on your side, you act like a bunch of punks and cowards because you have a 20-on-1 or whatever the number advantage you were, like the whatever number you had. I just thought it was an awful look. I think it is an easy fix like you're talking about, or it's just an easier exit strategy. Like do some tradition where you stay out, which they do. I mean, I saw pictures of Michigan players out in the field with Paul Bunyan, with the picture and, the statue and holding them up. Just say, all right, you guys have 5 minutes to clear the tunnel. That's all it takes. Just get everybody off the field. We'll stay out here. We'll linger. I guess the only problem with that is if you lose, the losing team goes in first. That's it. Losing team, if it's Michigan, sorry, you got to go out first and let the other team celebrate their win. Rerouting the tunnel is also an option too, but it seems to me way cheaper. And you could do this starting next week is, all right, we're going to let the losing team exit. We'll all wait out here and then you guys can go. But it's a blemish on college football, which we all love. And then it makes the sport look bad.
It won't be cheap. You just got a giant new TV deal that should help with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Michigan still not paying the players. Okay, they have a couple $100 million they bring in every year. They can probably find a way to free up some money in the budget. But also, you should just be able to act decently and walk next to each other through a tunnel without fighting. I don't know though, man. I don't know what preceded this. Right? There's the whole talk shit, get hit thing, right? And who knows? I'm not trying to do like the blame the victim thing here. All we saw was the actual fight part. And aren't you supposed to get quickly to your locker room? I don't know. Who was lingering? Was Michigan State lingering? Was Michigan lingering? I don't know enough about the situation to really say something that's going to get me in trouble. I wish I had more info, like some footage of what happened before this. Deserve
what he got.
Hey man, like there's certain things not to say to a group of pissed off dudes. All right, so not as best just keep walking.
Okay,
mess around, find out. But at the same time, like I'm serious. Like, should you jump him? Should you jump him? No. Should you know better? Potentially, yes.
You were getting your ass kicked. All that was a bunch of people who were pissed off because they got the shit kicked out of them, looking for somebody to take it out on. I don't give a shit what he said. Those were just I can't use the word I was about to use.
All right.
But yeah.
So 2 things here. Number one, all the guys who matter as far as like for the on-field thing, and Tom's probably interested in this because Michigan State plays Illinois this week. They play defense. 2 of these guys are defensive starters. The other one I saw the Michigan fans being like, why is this guy on Michigan State's roster anyway? He got kicked off Minnesota. So to Tom's point about like, should they continue to play for Michigan State? Maybe one of those is worth looking into if he truly got kicked off Minnesota. That's kind of a number of incidents there. I just wish I had more info on it.
There's also, did you see the video like the Michigan staffer who like turns and runs like scared out of his mind while a Michigan player is getting jumped? Like you should, like to me, that's a bad look. And I get you probably were terrified. And I don't even know if he's like a football coach. He's just a part of the program, but you're supposed to be the adult. You should get in there and protect your players. That's all I'll say. Like those guys on the team, I would lose a lot of respect for anybody on the staff. Even if it's an older athletic, I don't care who it is. You go over there and you say, hey, knock it off. And if the guy hits you with his helmet, so be it. Then you press charges. You got to go out there and defend your guys. I don't care. And then it's a quarterback. It's a walk-on quarterback. You better get out there and defend your guys.
Still caved in, but at least I'm going to be getting a check from it.
Right.
The chat. Yeah, the chat was saying it was the director of football operations. I don't know if that's true. We
I don't care what staff you were on. You're the adult, and you're associated with either program. Like if I'm seeing multiple people in the chat say it was Michigan State, it was Michigan, whoever it was. You got to get in there and break it up.
Oh, and Michigan said they had additional security following the Penn State thing. Where's the additional security?
To your point, though, Danny, like what's the funniest, well, not even funniest, but the one aspect of this to me is that you're talking about the guy running instead of trying to break it up. This is all happening. And what are most people's reactions? Let's pull out our phones and record it. Nobody there was like, we should break this up. It was like, ooh, let's record it.
Yep.
We can put it
out. That
out.
is a cancer in our society. Like we wouldn't believe. Like that's what everybody does with any fight. No one wants to break it up.
I'm
Don't
so
get me
glad
started
that
on
you
that.
brought up the staffer running away, because I just put myself with like the internal monologue. Oh no! Fight or flight. That man is a capital F flight to his core. Oh man. All right. Time to take a look at the changes in the AP Top 25 and the coaches poll. It is time for Poll Assassin. Now, there was a shakeup of sorts in the top 3. Tennessee did not jump Ohio State, but is tied with Ohio State, which brings a lot of historical importance and excitement to what has now become a 1-versus-2 showdown between Georgia and Tennessee. Tennessee had more first-place votes than Ohio State did, 18-15. Georgia with 30 first-place votes as it holds on to the number 1 spot. If you want to get down to voting points, it's even very small margins there. Georgia at 1,528. Tennessee and Ohio State each at 1,500. Then it is a drop off, 28 voting points between those two, and then a big drop off of more than 100 to the 4th place Michigan Wolverines. The tie at the top obviously is going to get some attention and bring some excitement to this weekend. Elsewhere, we saw Wake Forest tumble, but not all the way out to number 20. We got Oklahoma State fall to number 18 from number 9, and a lot of shakeup at the very edge of the rankings with Kentucky, Cincinnati, and South Carolina falling out. Someone predicted that on this podcast. Liberty, Oregon State, and UCF all make an appearance. Anything in the rankings themselves as a consensus or a particular ballot stand out from this week?
Top 22 lane.
19. I mean, you know what I was thinking about this morning as I was working on CBS Sports 131? North Carolina is being treated like Tulane.
Yes.
Yeah.
North Carolina is 7-1, undefeated in conference play, and it is being treated like the current front runner in the American Athletic Conference.
And it's only losses to Notre Dame, whereas Tulane's losses to Southern Miss.
I'm fine with most of the poll. I thought Oregon State jumping in was interesting, right? They
were off.
They had a bye week.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But they're a quality loss team. They've got 6 wins, and the only losses are to USC and Utah. And so you're like, well,
yeah.
How do we penalize them? They've won all the games that they should win. They'd been creeping up over the last couple of weeks, so it was not a huge surprise to me, even though they didn't play.
I don't see any for the first time this year. I don't see anybody in the top 10 who is very clearly not a top 10 quality team.
Mm-hmm.
You can, I think, somewhere between like that sort of Oregon to, I don't know that Ole Miss is the 11th best team in the country, but this poll looks fine as far as we can argue about where teams are within certain ranges, but I don't see a lot of just gross misrankings this week. I would have probably dropped Oklahoma State a little bit more than they did when you lose 48-0, but that was sort of just a concession game by Gundy. I mean, they just started running the ball a lot in the second half just to get the thing over with. I think they realized they were just toast. Tulane's the best team in the American.
Yes,
I think. Like we can UFR this later, but Cincy is fraudulent.
Yes, very much so.
I'm with you. I don't think the top 10 has any problems. I mean, I would have TCU higher, but other than that, I really don't have a whole lot of grief there. The one thing, and this is just the kind of funny thing that stands to me because this is where like the recency bias 1,000,000% comes into play. But 2 weeks ago, Syracuse beat NC State 24-9. But then NC State comes back with a monster 22-21 win over a terrible Virginia Tech team. And guess who's ranked ahead of Syracuse this week? The team that lost to it by 15 points.
So this is that's fair. I think, though, if we look at certain situations, and Tom, I don't disagree with you on this. I think you probably should have waited at least a week. NC State seems to have found something at quarterback because they were playing a glorified running back against Syracuse after losing Leary. And Syracuse, we talked about in the Locks pod, there is some chance that the defensive injuries are just going to smoke them. And Notre Dame ran for a ton of yards and just pushed them around. defensively. So like Cuse's defense might be done. I could see how somebody watching those two games would be like, ooh, wait a second. Like if they play, obviously we can't always do that if they played this thing again, but given you have to look at common opponents and some other results too. I think NC State's a better team than Cuse right now, given who's actually on the field.
MJ Morris, the freshman quarterback there. And,
Good.
I think that something that we've seen even in Texas A&M with some of its offensive success, you get that freshman quarterback in, all of a sudden these freshman receivers who've been playing with them in practice all season, they start to emerge as well. Timmons, I think his name was, the NC State wide receiver, freshman, stepped up as a little bit of a deep threat in that game. I think that NC State has found something too, and a little bit of context, I think, helps anchor the Wolfpack's position in the top 25. Anything else on the rankings?
Where would you have TCU, Tom? Because I was curious. Like, do you put them ahead of Bama?
I would have them ahead of Clemson and Alabama. Just they're 8-0, and they have far more impressive wins. And I think that, college football playoff rankings come out tomorrow. Don't be surprised if TCU's in the top 4. Just based on the way the committee usually ranks teams, don't be surprised if TCU's in the top 4.
I saw our friend Bill Connolly mention that the TCU's ranking essentially becomes a pivot point for how this committee, which remember changes out like two to three committee members every couple years. Where TCU falls in the rankings will go a long way to tell us what they think of the Big 12.
If you really follow this sport, prepare to be mad about where TCU's ranking goes, because like if you do this and if you make power ratings or if you just like watch all the games, and I don't know, I don't really think this committee is all that well comprised of people who really know the sport as far as like on the field stuff.
Or this one specific?
Ever kind of, especially with some of the metrics they give these guys, like they don't really account for margin of victory and things like that, which is really problematic.
Well, I saw
they use game control.
No, I saw the team sheet for the first time, like actually like looking at it. Sports Source Analytics puts it together. Yeah. And it's just a flood of numbers. And so what I think I realized is you just don't want to have bad numbers. Like you don't want to have anything that's like a 114 out of 131. Like it's just all of this information that it's like an overload for these committee members looking at it. So you just want to make sure that you don't have one thing, strength of schedule, defense, offense. You just want to make sure you don't have one statistic that looks glaring so that it's a reason why you're going to lose a tiebreaker type decision.
So
they also care a lot about top 25 wins.
Yes, this is where I was going with this. So if you like make your own ratings, there's generally sort of sometimes there's a 1 that's just way over everybody. And then there's kind of that like 2 to 5 grouping ish. Sometimes it's 1 to 5. And then kind of that like 6 to like 16ish range is oftentimes not that much different. And then sort of that like, 15 to 45 is very much the same, guys. Like Tom, I don't know if you got your ratings in front of you, but I mean, I would have
more than 10.
Yeah. Like I have like a touchdown difference between 15 and 45 right now.
Who's 15 and 45? Just for fun.
15 for me is Kansas State and 45 is East Carolina. I bumped them up because I think Ehlers is healthy now.
But to your point that if they played in a bowl game tomorrow, you would have Kansas State as a touchdown favorite.
Basically, yeah. Right. So here's the thing. The committee draws these arbitrary lines with top 25 win. They do not do a good job of accounting for consistently difficult schedule of teams that are sort of like 26 to like 40 or 45. And TCU is going to have a lot of teams who are in that 2 to 3 loss range who are unranked, but still much better than some of these, very bottom of the barrel SEC teams or Big Ten teams that like an Ohio State or a Bama, Georgia gets to play every week. So
what top 25 do they reference for their first one?
I don't know. That's a good question.
They're probably their own.
Oh, it's versus current CFP top 25 and versus current CFP top 10.
Right. But like this is their first one. So they use that one. Yeah. I'm saying, because I've always maintained that they pay attention. They watch games on TV. So they're aware of who is ranked where throughout the season. I also have a question for you guys, because I know they have this, a lot of information put in front of them. They also have, and they'll reference it all the time, that we get every game on DVD and we watch the games. How many games do you think these committee members study the game film of?
Zero.
No.
There's
Maybe
no
a
way in
former
hell.
coach who's like not an athletic director might throw in a little bit, but the majority of them, they get those DVDs and they should do the was it the Jamarcus Russell or which quarterback was it? Was it blank?
Yeah, it was Russell.
I think it was Jamarcus Russell. Yeah, they gave him the DVD and they said, "All right, go here's your film." They came back and like, "What'd you think?" I was like, "Oh yeah, it looks like a tough team." And they were like, "It's blank."
Oh my God.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I think they should do that with the committee members because I guarantee you they'd come back like, "Oh yeah, it was an impressive win for the top 25 versus 5." They don't watch.
Are you trying to tell me that like Colorado athletic director Rick George, who currently has a coach opening and needs to find a new football coach, isn't spending all his time in his office crushing film so he can get the college football playoff rankings correct? Is that what you're trying to tell me?
Funny, but counterpoint, maybe he's studying coaches.
True. True.
Even if you're going like snap by snap, right? And you have the Catapult app and you're able to watch the all 22 without a commercial breaks, it still takes a long time.
Right. And if
the best way to
every
do
top
this,
25 game, every top 25, it's just too much. And I just think it's stupid that they have this illusion like we watch the games. Like, I don't care. Just say your guys are getting information and you're talking to experts and you're getting expert information and you watch the games that matter, which are coming down to the top 4. When they say they watch all the games, I think it's comical.
Yeah. And also to Danny's point, they just basically, they craft the bottom 10 or so to justify what they do with the top 15. That's the whole point. It's like, hey, the reason why they rank 25 is to give themselves some cover for what they want to do with the top 4.
Going back to the AP real quick, though, I think John Wilner listens to Cover 3 and hates Cover 3.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
What do you do?
Talk about it. Like, North Carolina is Tulane in the eyes of many. Wilner has North Carolina at 25 on his ballot. He's got Wake Forest at 14, even after losing to Louisville this weekend. And he has Illinois at 22. So he's got Mississippi, 3-loss Mississippi State ahead of Illinois. He's got 3-loss Kentucky at 17 ahead of Illinois. He's got Wake Forest at 6-2 still in the 14. But the 7-1 Illini are at 22, and the 7-1 North Carolina Tar Heels are at 25.
Vendetta against the Cover 3 podcast.
Mm-hmm. And to be clear, like, he's got Illinois at 22. No other voter has them lower than 19. Wilner's got North Carolina at 25. But I mean, there is what Don Williams, our other favorite, again, another person who listens to the show and hates us, doesn't have North Carolina ranked at all.
You're not watching every game. You're not watching the country if you don't have North Carolina. I think they're the most underrated, underranked team in the country, maybe besides Illinois.
He's got exactly. He's got Arkansas ranked 24th, Texas 21st, Notre Dame 19th. Those are the only
With
three
losses, right? Those are all 3-loss teams.
North Carolina, which just not ranked at all.
Shout out to you, John Wilner, Don Williams. Congratulations. We'll put a coin in the bucket. You got your name mentioned on another edition of Poll Assassin. Wait, you got something else? We good? Yeah. All right. Coming up on the other side, it is our chance to offer our final thoughts and takes from the week that was. It is upon further review. We'll get into all of it next.
This is Paramount Plus. This is touch-ups, touchdowns, and getting touchy.
Sexy.
This is blue paint, yellow sponges, and red shirts. This is super suits, super sats, and super dumb. They're like really dumb. This is a mountain of entertainment. Paramount Plus. Stream now.
A team that has shown up on both of our upon further review boards. I figure we'll go ahead and start with the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. 41-24 winners against Syracuse. Bud, you mentioned that there were some things from this game you wanted to get to. I did as well, and it was, as you mentioned in the group chat, all through the lens of seeing Notre Dame hosting Clemson this weekend, because I think that the Fighting Irish, the success that they have had moving the ball on the ground, playing solid defense, they have found an identity, even with the lack of outside skill players. they have found an identity that I think is strong. And while the profile shows that your losses to Stanford and Marshall are incredibly embarrassing, it's also a team that has beaten North Carolina and now Syracuse. I think that this is a team that's turned the corner. I think the Fighting Irish have a decent chance to I haven't even looked at the spread yet, but I think the Fighting Irish have a decent chance to be much more of a challenge and a competitor with Clemson in town this coming Saturday than what we might have thought in the immediate wake of the Marshall or Stanford losses.
So the line opened 4. I'm all over that with Clemson.
As you did into saying something nice about Notre Dame.
Yes, right. So like Notre Dame got a good win for where Notre Dame is right now as a program. Like Clemson was kind of ripe to be got here if Notre Dame could push them around on the ground. As we talked about this in summer school when we had Stephen Bailey on, we talked about this, I think, when we did the Locks pod. It was like, will Syracuse's defense hold up? They're very thin. Like they're very small up front. They have to use confusion. They can't afford injuries there because they don't have depth. And they have started to have some guys go down. Schrader also tore his ACL in this game. Or not Schrader, excuse me. Garrett Williams tore his ACL in this game, the one of the best corners in the ACC. So wish him a speedy recovery. Hope he can get ready for the draft. Schrader also got hurt for Syracuse. But Notre Dame was able to push Syracuse around in a way that I do not think it can do to Clemson. Quarterback-wise, and I've talked to coaches who have played Notre Dame, and they're like, man, they're so ordinary on the outside. They don't scare you. The quarterback is really pretty bad, and like Mayer gets a lot of hype, and he's a good player, but he's not as twitchy as some of these guys who go on to play in the league like that. Now, maybe they're wrong about some of that, but Clemson, when they have looked sketchy this year, generally has been because teams have been able to exploit the corners, especially when they were hurt. Mm-hmm. And Drew Pine was 9 of 19 for 116 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 pick. Once they got up, they're like, we're not going to risk this.
I mean, Notre Dame functionally just isn't built to throw the ball. They don't want to. They would love to get 4 or 5 yards on their first down run, set things up, and if they get stuck in 3rd and 5, then find a quick little out route and a matchup problem, get the ball to Mayer. I mean, it is an identity that is not built to win a championship, but it is an identity of a team that I think can win a game. If Clemson does not bring, and look, Brian Brzee, Tyler Davis, the defensive tackles on this team are phenomenal, but I kind of think Notre Dame's offensive line is cooking too. And so I think it will be a challenge for that defense on the interior to make sure that they don't get pushed around physically.
See, my problem with that is like, if you look at Notre Dame at a success rate level on the ground, they're actually pretty decent. It's just, there is absolutely no explosive play factor on the ground. Like they can get you 4 yards. It might even get you 5. Start asking for 6 or 7. You're asking a little bit too much from them. So I agree. I don't think the offensive line, I think the offensive line is improving, and I think they're opening holes. It's just, they don't have somebody that's capable of getting into the open field and beating a linebacker or beating a safety in a one-on-one spot and getting a big play out of it. And I think that is a severe hindrance for them, especially this week against Clemson, because even if you do get by that defensive line, you're going to need more explosive plays to beat Clemson, just because it's going to be hard to drive down the field in 12, 13 plays against that defense.
Anything else on Notre Dame?
Yeah, I'm really curious because of the team they're facing. Like, what is Clemson going to want to do? Like, after DJ's shakiest game yet this year, getting benched, they're going to want to run Shipley. And this is also a Notre Dame team which had the most success against Ohio State than anybody else that's done against Ohio State. I mean, Penn State was doing a great job for 3 quarters. But I think if I would lean anything, it'd probably be under. I think this game. Because I think Clemson's going to want to say, you know what? We realize what we are. We're a Will Shipley led team, not a DJU led team.
I want to push back on the narrative that Notre Dame played Ohio State better than anybody. If you go back and watch the game, and we talked about it at the time, Notre Dame's game plan for that entire game was, let's not get blown out. They took, like, every single play, they were running that play clock down to 2 or 1 before they snapped the ball. They were just trying to keep the Ohio State offense off the field as much as possible to keep that close. Now, granted, as far as the final score works, yeah, they played Ohio State better than anybody else. But I think Penn State played Ohio State better than anybody in the country this weekend because they were moving the ball on them better than anybody.
That game again on
Tom Pernelli says Notre Dame played to cover, not to win, and he's right.
Mm-hmm.
No, they played not to get embarrassed.
Sure, yeah, it was more of a reputation type thing than. Although I actually don't know that the strategy which would allow you to win diverges all that much from the strategy that allows you to keep it close. Like there's no strategy.
Wouldn't that be the same against Notre Dame or against Clemson too? Not to get not embarrassed, but with their and the quarterback situation is rough.
Yeah, they have to.
Yeah.
Brandon Joseph, former All-American from Northwestern, flashed in that Syracuse game too. That ball hawking safety will be hoping DJU is a little bit loose with it again. Notre Dame has playmakers on the defensive side of the ball that can make you pay. Something that will be very important for DJ to keep it tight and avoid the same kind of turnovers that we saw against Syracuse. Tom, what's your airing of grievances?
Oh, okay. I don't remember if you did this on the show or right after the show, Bud.
It was after, and I apologize.
On further review, Bud is a mush, and he's a horrible friend. And for the people that weren't paying attention or didn't hear because it was after the show, my money line sprinkle was San Diego State plus 275. We're recording the show Saturday night. Show finishes. San Diego State's up 11, and he says, "I don't want to mush it, but your San Diego State sprinkle's looking pretty good." And then Fresno State erases an 11-point deficit in the final 67 seconds of the game to win. But I'll forgive that. My bigger grievance is with Mr. Daniel Cannell. Daniel,
Oh boy.
remember a few weeks ago, 2 Michigan State Spartans, Bud and Chip, were ganging up on you in the hallway, in the tunnel heading to the locker room, taking NC State over Florida State. And I saw you getting jumped. And unlike a Michigan staffer, I didn't run away. I didn't pull out my camera and start recording. I jumped into the fray and started swinging back, and together we beat the hell out of them. I thought we were boys. But then on Thursday in the Locks Pod, you come and you take Nebraska against the spread and force me to fight you? I thought we were brothers. I didn't want to have to beat you up, but I did. And I just want you to know, it hurt. It hurt my feelings that you did that.
And there was a sucker punch in the sprinkles too, with a little note after I had long gone.
I had to find out after you were gone. Oh yeah, Nebraska plus 275.
I deserve
22 Tommy DeVito passing in that game.
I deserve every bit of ass whooping that I'm getting on the cover 3 locks because it has been atrocious, and I deserve it all. So I apologize. I did rank them 13th in my 12 on Sundays.
Yes,
with a special shout out to you. I did. God.
I mean, they deserve a spot. You got to expand the DK rankings when the Fighting Illini are knocking on the door of a Big Ten championship.
Can we just talk about how football playoff rankings are coming out tomorrow and Illinois is going to be in them? Let's just talk about that for a while.
Danny, you were talking about Drake May earlier. I know that you want to turn a spotlight on the Tar Heels.
Well, I do, because I get both sides of it, right? Because if you look for signature wins, where are they? And it's not their fault that Miami's down, that, Virginia Tech is down. It's not their fault, but all they can do is beat the teams that are on their schedule. And the Notre Dame loss, I don't want to say it looks better because it's not a good loss, but it's their only loss. And at some point, we've got to recognize in a loss, which, by the way, Drake made through his third game with 5 interceptions and 0 touchdowns. And we did it on here. Who's, if we wanted
0 interceptions.
What's that?
Did you say you mean 5 touchdowns and no interceptions? Or
yes, yeah, 5 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. I say it the reverse.
Yes.
Too many jackhammers going on here in the background.
You gave him a Spencer Rattler, the South Carolina quarterback.
I did. He has been. I think North Carolina is the most underrated, underranked team in the country, and I think Drake May is the most underrated quarterback in the country. He's the quarterback that everybody wants Will Levis to be so bad, and he's out here doing it on the field. And as far as the Heisman goes, and I don't like tearing another, because I love Hendon Hooker, I love CJ Stroud, I love Caleb Williams, But if you don't have Drake May in the Heisman consideration, at least as a top 3 or a top 4 candidate, then you're not watching college football. And he's playing at an elite level. And he's doing it with a defense that is struggling, where every possession he gets the ball is a very high pressure possession, meaning you got to go down and score because you don't know if your defense is going to get a stop. You don't have the luxury of, if I turn it over, my defense is going to give it right back. So I think Carolina is also a team, man, they control their own destiny. That was a big win for them in the Coastal. And I think they could present some problems for Clemson. But they first, Nick, the thing also when you watch Carolina, kind of watch them with one eye. You're like, oh, gosh, don't screw up this easy game you're supposed to win.
Yeah, May is third nationally in quarterback efficiency rating behind Stroud and Hooker, but he's doing it while throwing 7 more passes a game, and he's a freshman, whereas those guys are kind of experienced vets.
They're going to need him to keep playing great, and he is. I mean, like the throws on the run that he makes that are downfield, across the field, and hitting these guys in stride, that looks like what you see from Mahomes and Josh Allen. And I'm not saying he's as good as those guys, but I'm saying like stylistically, other people don't make those type of throws. That is just like, that's the stuff you really can't coach. They're going to need it though, because Taylor, one of the best defensive players for North Carolina, is apparently out for the season now after that injury, the knee injury he had in that game. And Chip, have we heard about about Desmond Evans, the other DN they have?
Mm-mm.
Yeah, that's a little scary for this
No,
weekend.
listen, man, you take it for what it is. A defensive player is missing from North Carolina. Like, okay, like, so they're going to go
5 touchdowns.
Yeah, they're going to go from number 110 to 112 in your defensive power ratings. The thing that is truly fun about Drake May and this North Carolina offense is how quickly they can flip a game. They were down 24-14. Like, the offense was not pouring it on, and it looked like Pitt was executing exactly the strategy that it needed to get in and out of Chapel Hill with the win. And then they turn it on, and then it just becomes a snowball, and they just start marching right down the field. It started with a 12-play, 75-yard drive, couple third down conversions in there. Drake May knowing, like you talk about back against the wall, season, like ACC championship hopes on the line. And as a freshman quarterback, he stepped up and he led the touchdown drive, cuts it to 24-21, 3 more touchdowns in the fourth quarter just to make sure they leave no doubt, make it look a little bit prettier on the scoreboard. But it can happen really, really fast for North Carolina. And that's something that's special and definitely helped them get to the 7-1 status. All right, what else do we want to highlight?
I want to go to a game I did not get to watch on Saturday, but I watched it this morning. Man, Dave Aranda in his bag. And we talked about Bear Morton and how damn good he was the prior week, freshman quarterback for Texas Tech. And I do think he'll be good, but Dave Aranda had a little something for Morton there in Lubbock. 11 of 33 for $152 and 3 picks. That's welcome to scheme diversity, young freshman. And Dave Aranda had something going there. And offensively, Baylor's offensive line is pretty good. Coach Joey McGuire for the Red Raiders said that his one worry entering the week was if Baylor could run it on them. And yeah, they could.
Richard Reese had 148 and 3 touchdowns.
And the longest carry there was 19. So it wasn't like it was just one explosive carry. They were just like, hey, here's 5, here's 6, here's 7, hit the bus.
Can Baylor get back into the Big 12 title picture?
Sure.
Yeah.
Because they still have Kansas State, TCU, and Texas all on the schedule.
Mm-hmm.
They need – so remember, they do not have tiebreakers against Oklahoma State or against – I mean, West Virginia is certainly not going to be in the race. So they need to make sure that Oak State picks up another loss, I think.
It would help.
Yeah, they could totally do it.
Mm-hmm.
Team to watch.
One last UFR for me is just something kind of I meant to bring it up when I was airing grievances against and with what we were talking about with Nebraska. But one thing to keep an eye on, because like I joked during the Cover 3 pod when we were fighting, I says, Illinois is coming off a bye getting ready for this game, and Nebraska's coming off a bye with its coaching staff looking for other jobs. Casey Thompson got hurt in the first half of that game. And then Logan Smothers comes in for a series before Chubba Purdy then takes over in the second half. And neither one of them looked all that prepared to play, which is something to keep in mind. It's like with an interim coaching staff, How many reps do you think the backups are getting for their development in practice when those guys are just trying to see if they can keep their job? You could tell they were 100% invested in Casey Thompson.
Purdy was at Florida State, and he didn't get to play much, but in practice, he was not good. So, like, that doesn't really surprise. I know FSU fans flipped out when he transferred, but like that's not really a loss based on anything that we've seen so far in his college career. Do we know what Thompson's injury was?
He hurt his hand. He got hit as he was under.
Okay, got it.
Something happened to his hand because he was just I thought it was like a funny bone injury at first, just the way his arm was kind of shaking, but he never came back in the game. So I don't know what it was. It might be nerve. I don't want to speculate.
One last UFR. Cincinnati is the frauds that we thought they might be. Like how bad they looked against Tulsa, how shaky they looked against USF. I think that was the true Cincinnati, to be honest. Like UCF's defense is not particularly good, and they had less than 350 yards in that ball game and lost to a team that lost its quarterback in the first 20 minutes of the game. And UCF still put up 500 yards on them with a backup. Cincinnati, terrible passing day. I mean, 45 for 289 is really inefficient, and on the ground, 35 rushing yards. And that's the defense in UCF that Holden Ahlers went 30 of 36 for 370 the week before. So Cincinnati is not like they've had a huge drop off. That to me is like not a top 50 team.
Yeah, like if you look at them like defensively, they're probably like a top 30 defense in most metrics, but the offense, but compared to last year, that's a huge drop because again, they sent a whole bunch of dudes to the NFL off that defense. But offensively is where they've really just kind of fallen off a cliff, especially. Like take away Desmond Ridder, and apparently Cincinnati's, the gap between Ridder and Bryant is pretty significant.
Would they be the worst team in the Big 12 if they were in the Big 12 this year?
No.
See, I think you're a little.
Are you sure? Like they're better than West Virginia?
Cincinnati. I don't know. I think you're being hard on Cincinnati. They played Arkansas to one possession, first game of the year. I think they're clearly in a year where they're not. They're going to be 9-3 when it's all said and done. Like that's not a bad year. They're just not up to the standard that Luke Fickell has built. And it's more of a developmental program anyway. So it's clearly one of those ones where you lose that much, 9 guys drafted to the NFL. Those are some significant losses that are harder to replace at Cincinnati than they would be at a Georgia, Bama, Clemson, Ohio State.
I think I
don't know. I like Luke Fickell a lot. I think he's done a great job there.
He won 17 conference games in a row.
Yeah,
and that was right. That's what.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I'm just trying to figure out if they're the worst team in the Big 12 because I understand why they had the drop.
I'm not saying they're fraudulent in prior years at all. I'm just saying that we had a suspicion for about a month now that they might be fraudulent this year. Like they barely beat a Tulsa team that had a bunch of guys out. They struggled with USF. They dominated SMU for quite a while, and then won by 2. Right.
Shout out to Matthew in the chat, said BYU might be the worst team in the Big 12 when they make the run over.
Yeah, I will say my power rankings have them being better than just about the same as Texas Tech and better than West Virginia and Iowa State right now. So they would not finish it last based on my power ratings.
Based on
that league is going to have so much parity. It's going to be a fun league.
Yeah.
And that's what they sold.
Yeah.
They sold competitiveness and entertainment, and this is an entertainment product in the eyes of those media rights companies. So we mentioned it earlier. The first college football playoff rankings will be released on Tuesday, and we will be here with an instant reaction to those rankings. Probably go live about 7:20. We're not going to wait for the end of the show and the committee chair or whatever. But once we've got the full 1 through 25 all set, we will jump on youtube.com/cover3. If you want to join the discussion live, of course, there will be the podcast out as well afterwards. So that's on Tuesday. Wednesday. Ooh, boy, time for superlatives. That means player of the month, team of the month, game of the month, and coach of the month, plus Tom's special superlatives. All that will be on Wednesday. If you want to make a nomination, we can be bribed. Just reach out to us wherever you find us. And then Thursday, of course, the massive Week 10 slate, all broken down in our Locks episode. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, hitting you 4 times during the work week, all the way between now and the end of the season. Also, Maction back. We'll be doing some live breakdowns of live breakdowns of MAC games on some of these Tuesday night reaction pods. So be sure to tune in for that. You can follow him on Twitter at Tom Fernelli. You can follow him at Bud Elliott3. You can follow me at Chip_Patterson. Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you.